What's up, guys? The Rogue Bludger here with Unashamed Gaming, getting ready to bring you another Unashamed Bible study here today. Before we get started, I do want to say this is chapter 20, which means we have 4 more chapters left after this, roughly a month, and we'll be done with Luke. And I just want to go ahead and put this in your minds now so that you can be thinking about things that you might want to move on to next. Whether that be a topical study of, any issue or another book of the Bible or anything you want, basically, just leave it in the comments. Anything you want to look over to study, I'll take any suggestions. And if I don't get one, then we'll figure something out. But that being said, let's jump right into it here in Luke chapter 20. So last week, Jesus is now in Jerusalem. We saw the triumphal entry and where he overturns the tables of the money changers at the temple. And this is a little bit later. It says one day he was teaching the people in the temple courts and preaching the gospel. And the chief priests and the elders, they come together and they say, "Tell us by what authority you are doing these things." And Jesus asks them a question. He says, "If you can tell me, I will tell you that. If you can tell me John's baptism, was it from heaven or was it from men?" And they go and they think about that. So basically, he's asking, was John's baptism from God or was it a institution of man? Was John, when John baptized people, was he doing it under his own power and authority or under the authority of God? And so they talk about that for a minute, and they say, well, if we say it was from men, all the people will get mad at us and stone us because the people were persuaded, it says, that John was a prophet, which of course he was. And he says, but if we say it was from heaven, he will ask, then why didn't you believe him? So there's really no good answer for him there for them to give. And the reason, so they end up answering, we don't know where it was from. And Jesus says, then neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. And initially you might think, why won't he tell them? And to me, I think the purpose of the teachers and the chief priests asking this question was to trap Jesus in his words. If he openly spoke something that could be seen as blasphemy, they would have an excuse to arrest him. Right there and then. But Jesus kind of did the same thing to them that they were doing to him. He trapped them in their words. He gave them no good answer. He gave them no good answer to his question, so they couldn't answer. So therefore, he didn't answer. Just kind of a smart little move there to avoid something that will happen. Of course, he will get arrested, but the time was not right at this point in time. And then we get a parable, which to me has a rather obvious meaning, but it's the parable of the tenants. It goes, a man planted a vineyard, rented it to some farmers, and went away for a long time. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruit of the garden, or some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent another servant, but they also beat him and treated shamefully, and sent him away empty-handed. He sent still a third, and they wounded him and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I will send my son, whom I love. Perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they talked the matter over. This is the heir, they said. Let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill the tenants and give the vineyard to others. So, to me, and the reason they would get the inheritance if they killed the heir, my Bible has a note that says Jewish law provided that a piece of property unclaimed by an heir would be declared ownerless and could be then claimed by others. The tenants assumed that the son came as the heir to claim his property, and that if he were slain, they could themselves claim the land. So let's break this down. To me, this parable is talking about the tenants would be the Jewish people, and they were given, given the covenant, they were given the law, they were given, the honor of being God's people. And he sent servants to them, those being the prophets, and the prophets of, the Old Testament, and I would assume John the Baptist. And so those are the tenets in the story. And then he sends his son, being Jesus. So this is like God sending his son, God sending the prophets, and then he sends Jesus kind of to proclaim the word. But in the parable, they kill the son, and in the same way, they will kill Jesus. It's both a prophecy and a parable, and that is a powerful picture. And they kill him so that the inheritance will be theirs, in the same way that the Pharisees want to kill Jesus so that he doesn't, mess up what they got going. They got a good thing going. They are the ones who know the law, and they kind of make the rules around there. So it's really, it's their thing. So they don't want Jesus messing that up. And it says that he will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others. I think this is speaking of when, after Jesus dies, and is of course resurrected, then it's not just a thing for Jews anymore. It's Christianity. It's something that anybody can be a part of. He'll give that promise of eternity, of being God's people to anybody. After the resurrection of Jesus. So that's what, to me, that parable is speaking about. He then goes on to say, Jesus looks directly at them and asks, "Then what is the meaning of that which is written? The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone." And this is, you hear this verse a lot. It says, "Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but he on whom it falls will be crushed." The teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately, because they knew that he had spoken this parable against them, but they were afraid of the people. So there were a lot of people around there that supported Jesus, and they didn't want to arrest him in public because of that. But we do see they keep trying to arrest Jesus, so it's building. But basically, the stone the builders rejected becoming the capstone. The person that is getting rejected, being Jesus, rejected by his own people, will become the capstone to humanity. Basically, he will be, the final piece of the puzzle that is the complete picture of Christianity, of the kingdom of God, through his resurrection. And that's what he's speaking about here. And it says, "Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but he on whom it falls will be crushed." So I'm not necessarily sure what this means, but I think it's saying, everybody who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces. All those who rely on God, their lives may be broken down. It may take some breaking down before you get built back up, but it's at the end you will be put back together in a more complete picture. But he on whom he on whom it falls will be crushed. Anyone who is against Jesus, against God, will end up, crushed in the end. And so again, it says they send spies to follow Jesus, to try and trap him in his words, so they have an excuse to arrest him again. And they ask him, "Teacher, we know that you speak what you speak and teaches what is right, and that you do not show partiality, but teach a way of God in accordance with the truth." And they ask, "Is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" Because they're trying to get Jesus to say, no, it's not right to pay taxes to Caesar. It's idolatry, and things like that, to get him to commit a crime against the state, a crime against the Romans, so they would want to arrest him. But he sees this, he sees right through their plan. He says, "Show me a denarius. Whose portrait is and inscription are on it?" And they reply, "It's Caesar's." So he says, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." It says they were unable to trap him in what he said there in public, and astonished by his answer, they became silent. So really, that's a genius answer. He's saying, give, money and things in this world that God doesn't necessarily, God doesn't want that. He wants your heart. He wants your love. He wants to be part of your life. He doesn't want you to, you know, to not pay taxes because it's not gonna glorify him or something like that. It's not. Jesus is saying, it's not idolatry to pay taxes. It's not, worship. It's just doing what you're called to do under the law. But he's saying, so give those things to Caesar, give to God what is God's, which is, your whole life, your love, your time, your ambitions, things like that. Give those to God. And he's saying that's what God is asking for. And they, again, they're unable to get him to say something bad to get him arrested. So from there, we move on to resurrection and marriage. So there's some Sadducees, and they believe that there is no resurrection. And they present Jesus with this question. They say, if there's a woman and her husband dies, leaving no children, it is the law states, that her brother or his brother is to marry the woman and have children for him. So the brother would then marry the woman, and again he dies, leaving no children. And it says there were 7 brothers, and this happens through all of them. So each one of the brothers dies, leaving no children. And then it says at the resurrection, in heaven, whose wife will she be? Which brother will be married to her? And Jesus replies, he says, the people of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of taking part in that age and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. And they can no longer die, for they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. But in the account of the bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise, for he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. So he's kind of doing 2 things here. He's saying that there's no marriage in heaven. You're considered angels. It's different there. It's not about that. It's about being in the presence of God. And then he calls them out directly, saying, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. He's calling out their refusal to believe in the resurrection. And some of the teachers of the law respond, well said, teacher, but no one dared to ask him any more questions because I guess they didn't want to get called out. Jesus is directly calling them out on something, and that's probably not very fun in front of all your peers. So we go on here to the last section of the chapter where it's entitled, Whose Son is Christ? And Jesus says to them, how is it that they can say the Christ is the son of David? David himself declares in the book of Psalms, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. And David calls him Lord. How then can he be his son? So how could David be calling somebody who is his son Lord? It's kind of confusing until you break it down. It's saying that Christ is descended from David, the line of David. That is how they say he is the son of David. But I think Jesus is really pointing out here that even David, the king, the original, the king of Israel, they all, of course, know about David. He's calling Jesus Lord. He's calling him higher than himself. Jesus is just trying to show them that he is Lord. He is higher than any of their kings, the prophets, anybody. And that is something kind of unheard of, to say you're higher than David. His last point of the chapter, he says, beware the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and love to be greeted in the marketplace and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. Such men will be punished most severely. So, he's basically saying they're fake. They're showing all these things. They're acting like they're these great people, but really they're evil. They're hypocrites. So he's just calling them out. He's saying, beware of them. Beware of their teaching. Kind of like the beware the yeast of the Pharisees thing. Same kind of story. So in this chapter, we see the build up. We see Jesus really making more and more people mad. They're looking for more excuses to arrest him, to throw him in prison, things like that. Some important points here about the importance of Jesus, how high he is in the rankings, you could say, even above David. And he's really just calling people out, making some strong points. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, be thinking about things you want to move on to after Luke. I hope you guys are enjoying the study. 4 more chapters left after this week, and we'll see you next week, guys. Thank you.